Thank you very much, Monty. Well, many Australians benefit from organ transplants, but rarely do they make contact with the families of the donors. David Ridoutt received a kidney transplant after the death of a 10-year-old boy, Ben Harrison. Ben's parents, Graham and Elaine Harrison, have met David, and they all join us this morning. Good morning to you.
Morning, Liz.
David, I'll start with you. You're a 53-year-old man. You'd suffered kidney problems, I guess, for many, many years. And it really did end up to the point that you needed a transplant.
Yes, I had it first diagnosed back in 1977 as a polycystic kidney disease, and I was on dialysis for 3 years from 1990, which involves, 6 hours, 3 times a week, trying to maintain a job. It wasn't that easy, and your lifestyle changes and your quality of life goes down.
And knowing that your life is now dependent on receiving a donor organ, how difficult is that, knowing that you really have to wait?
Well, it's that uncertainty. There's no such thing as an average waiting time. There are people out there who've been on dialysis for 15 years or more, and they're obviously now settled into that as a way of life. Other people have been on dialysis for 6 months and get the opportunity for a donation or a transplantation. But it's all about the quality of life, and when this golden opportunity comes up, you generally grasp it with both hands. And
that's how you saw it when you were told that a kidney was available to you?
Yes, a phone call at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and the stunned amazement of it all, and then you turn around and put yourselves in the hands of the very good surgeons at St Vincent's.
You're in a totally different position to the donor family, obviously. At what point did you get around to understanding what needed to happen for you to benefit?
Well, I guess the initial, it probably took 2 to 3 months after the transplantation before I became even aware that there was another side to the issue. I mean, to be brutally honest, it was all me at the time of getting the transplantation, because that's the nature of it. You are concerned about yourself. It's only afterwards that you are more concerned about where that donation came from, and then other people involved.
And then a whole series of events occurred which were because normally you don't meet the family of the donor.
Not at all, no.
That's pretty much a rule and regulation.
I believe it is, yes. Our meeting came about 2 or 3 completely separate and interdependent issues. 12 months after the transplant, I was listening to a program on the radio by chance, and listened to a person called Harrison being interviewed about their child who had passed away, and they've been generous enough to donate the organs. My ears pricked up after a while, but it sort of was filed away. I couldn't do anything about it because I knew the surname, and that was it.
But you were aware that a 10-year-old boy's...
Indeed, a 10-year-old child. They told me that simply because it was a very unusual in that it was a duplex kidney, a double kidney, in fact, and it had to basically fit.
And then your wife came across an article.
Yeah, some 18 months later, she came across an article in a waiting room of a doctor's surgery, which actually named, just as a piece of news, really, I guess, and information, Graham and Elaine Harrison, the mother and father of a 10-year-old child, a 10-year-old boy. And I just couldn't believe it, because we now had initials, and I was just driven, as my wife was, to attack the phone book.
You felt the need to make the contact?
Yes, I think it's a bit like adoptive children who feel the need to make contact. I mean, I can't explain it. It's something that I felt needed to be done, and was lucky enough, after exhaustive telephone calls, and to actually make contact, and was pleased that the Harrisons were of the same mind.
Well, we'll go to Elaine and Graham now. When that call came, I think, Elaine, you got it.
Yeah, my daughter answered the phone, and I believe it was Margaret that actually rang and asked if there was a Graham and Elaine Harrison that lived there.
How did you feel about the call? Did you feel comfortable?
I wasn't too sure what it was all about to start with, until he sort of, after mentioning that, did we have a son named Ben, and then mentioning that he had actually received a kidney 2.5 years earlier, that sort of gave a clue to who actually was on the other end of the phone.
Were you happy to meet the recipient, Graham? Because you did organise
yes.
a meeting.
Yes, I was ecstatic. What David just said, Elaine and I felt exactly the same. We made the donation and we wanted to actually close that chapter. It was almost as though the door was still open. We wanted to do that final meeting.
And is that part of the feelings when you're in that position of donating a member of the family's organs? You need to know how the recipient has fared?
I think in a majority of cases it's still a very personal thing though. A majority of cases that fellow organ donor parents that I've spoken to at least would like to have a letter back from the recipient saying that they've received it, they're well, and what we've done has been appreciated.
That meeting, as I understand, was a very, very emotional time.
It was. We didn't know each other, so we had to describe what we both looked like. And we met at the town hall steps, and I could see David on the other side of the intersection, and we both walked to one another. A bit awkward, didn't know whether to shake hands or hug each other.
I'm still wearing the same jacket that I wore that day, and Graham was wearing another leather jacket, I think.
So, and then we went to a restaurant in Queen Victoria building and had about a 2-hour luncheon there. Got a bit emotional towards the end there, but I have never regretted it, and it's been great since.
And I guess that does bring us to the issue of organ donation. Both of you felt quite strongly about the issue. When Ben died, and he died of complications, as I understand, in theatre and surgery, you didn't hesitate to donate organs?
No, Ben had a bit of a rough trot right from the word go. He had a TOF, which is a complication with the trachea, and he was in hospital for 2 to 3 months in his early stages of life, and at that stage we said, seeing so many little babies around us dying, that if anything ever happened we would like to do something. So when he went in for corrective surgery and the worst came, Elaine and I hadn't actually discussed it then and there, but we both thought of it at the same time. When the doctors approached us, we both together said we wanted to do something.
You understand the fears people do have about organ donation. I mean, clearly you overcame those fears.
Well, some people just don't feel like they can give up part of their loved one at that time. It's part of their body being taken away, but for us it was like, well, what else? We couldn't do much else at that stage but think about giving it to someone who might be able to need it, and in the case with some people with hearts, it's a life-giving thing that they may not survive otherwise.
Because Ben's heart did go to somebody else as well.
Yeah, it was heart-lung.
Heart-lung. So, I mean, you really did contribute to many other lives.
Well, to emphasise that point too, it was the fact that we were going through hell then, the grief that we were suffering, and at the back of it all, I just didn't want to, if we could save another family, in this case 2 families going through what we were going through, then it would just make it that much easier for us.
Well, it's an important day coming up. On Sunday, it's Organ Donor Awareness Day. There are a few other things happening as well.
Yes, there's a lot going on. There's the Kidney Awareness Week that is following on, and also the Victorian and New South Wales Police have done a great thing, and they got together, and they're doing the Coppers for Transplantation, Coppers for Gold, from Benalla to Coffs Harbour. They're doing a bike ride and raising money for organ donors and the like, and also they've got a gold card now, a plastic card like a Visa card, that is in all the police stations along along the route that they're making available to the public.
Well, it's you know, it's a tough story. It's just such an emotional story all around, but it's one that needs to be told, and it's wonderful to see that the families have been able to come together. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. More of Today after the break.
To change.